Next, I would like to introduce our first speaker. Benjamin Speyer is the founder and CEO of Serica, and he's here to provide an overview on the Chinese healthcare market, as well as discussing some of the innovations and opportunities that make this sector and this market so interesting. Benjamin?
Thank you very much, Matthew, and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Benjamin Speyer. I'm the founder and CEO at Serica. It's a great pleasure to present to you all today. So just before getting into it, I'll just give you a little bit of background on Serica and myself. Serica is a global technology and financial advisory firm. Our mission is to empower innovators to leverage the agility and scale of the Chinese market to solve the world's most pressing challenges. Healthcare is one of our largest sectors, and we believe there is an abundance of opportunities for UK and Chinese healthcare companies to collaborate and make the world a better place. My expertise is in cross-border M&A, joint ventures, and capital investments between Chinese and Western technology companies. So today's presentation will have that practical and commercial edge. So as I'm sure many of you are already aware, China's healthcare market has grown exponentially over the last 3 decades and is expected to overtake the US in the next few years. But very little of substance is known about the market, making it hard for innovators, especially startups and SMEs, to make well-informed strategic decisions. So I'm going to do my very best to give you a broad overview of the market and the opportunities available to you in around 10 minutes. But of course, you know, throughout the next 3 days, you're going to hear from world-class experts that will help round out that knowledge and give you a really clear 360 view of the market. So we often find that the best way to start understanding China, particularly if you're new to the market, is trying to grasp the sheer scale of the place. So let's take a quick look at that. So we have a fifth of the world's population, an elderly population and chronic illness volume that's comparable to the entire population of the United States. 7.7 trillion renminbi in healthcare expenditure in 2021. Over 35,000 hospitals with over 7.4 million beds, over 500,000 public primary care facilities, and the impressive feat of reaching 96% of the population with basic health insurance. So while the market has transformed itself, it does face a number of existential challenges. So a rapidly aging population and increased life expectancy has led to an enormous increase in chronic illnesses. China was largely underprepared for this. The focus of most provinces was on economic growth, so spending on healthcare took a back seat. And this has led to a lack of qualified doctors, which has severely overburdened a small amount of medical institutions to deliver the bulk of outpatient visits. And this has exacerbated the already highly unequal healthcare access between urban and rural areas. I'd like to make you all think just for a moment the scale of China and the fact that these challenges are completely unprecedented globally and are going to dictate regulatory reform and market development for China and indeed the world for decades to come. So what's China doing about this? Healthy China 2030, from vision to action. So this is the first long-term health plan that China has ever established. It was rolled out in 2016 to basically dramatically course correct the trajectory of the healthcare landscape. What you see in front of you is the official structure. And you can see it's rather vague, probably a little challenging for, I think, most Westerners to wrap their heads around. So what we've done instead, to give you all a better idea of where this is all going, is taking a look at some of the key targets. Now, I won't read all of these out, but I would say that these are far-reaching, not just in terms of reform, economic stimulus, private sector activity, but also in the day-to-day lives of the Chinese people. I've been based in Hangzhou for 9 years, and I've seen a dramatic increase in the the amount of outdoor activity areas, anti-smoking laws, even starting to discuss mental health, something that traditionally was never done. So the impacts of policies like this from the Chinese government are extremely far-reaching. But what does that look like today in terms of the market? So you can see this policy plus other external growth drivers has created one of the second largest healthcare market in the world. You can see here on the left that healthcare expenditure has been growing year on year and is expected to reach $3.36 trillion by 2035. At the same time, you can see the growth in private hospitals. And 2016 was the beginning of that overtaking, and you can see it's quite steady growth for public hospitals, but private hospitals are growing dramatically. However, if we look a little closer, we can see that expenditure to GDP is just 6.7%. Now, this lags far, far behind most major industrialized nations, which demonstrates there's considerable room for growth in the coming years. So if you're an innovator with a proven solution already in the market, and you can demonstrate that you can help China overcome its vast array of healthcare challenges, there are a huge range of lucrative opportunities that you can seize. So we'll take a look at some of them in pharma and medtech and digital health. So pharmaceuticals. So China, they're largely transitioning away from being a generics manufacturer and API supplier into a world-class innovator in their own right. You can see that in 2019, innovative drugs overtook generics for the very first time. And this kind of coincided with a number of rapid changes throughout those years to the global pharma landscape, particularly in new drug licensing, patents, and publications. I would like to direct you all to the graph on the right, the bullet point below it. You can see here an absolutely huge increase, almost $380 billion in growth of the market cap for Chinese biopharma companies over a period of only 5 years. You often hear scale in China, but this is a prime example of China's speed and scale coming ahead. It really is mind-blowing. So in terms of the growth drivers, the sector is benefiting from significant regulatory reform. There's been a sharp spike in regulatory approval in the last couple of years, greater internationalization, ample financing options, and a proliferation of CRO and CDMO infrastructure that's been amplified by large numbers of overseas returnees. But where are the opportunities for you? Well, as we see them, they're in innovative drugs, precision medicine, equipment and logistics, and digital transformation. I would like to point out that oncology and diabetes solutions are in particularly high demand, and that's an area that if any of you are involved in, I would seriously consider making strong moves in the market. When it comes to medtech, we get a slightly different picture. So we can see the medical instruments market's valued at 1.15 trillion renminbi. That'll reach 2.25 trillion by 2027. And they're expected to have a quarter of the global market by 2030. Looking a little deeper though, you can see it really is medical devices that are driving the market forward. It's growing year on year, and they're heavily reliant on international firms for supply. Interestingly, there are no dominant market players, quite unusual in a market like China. So for example, Mindray, a fantastic medtech company based in Guangdong province in the south of China, so the market leader has just a 3% market share, and non-listed companies own 74% of the market. It needs greater efficiency and it needs more specialized solutions. So it's a highly favorable environment for top-class innovators. In terms of growth drivers, they're benefiting heavily from regulatory reform, particularly zones in Hainan and the Greater Bay Area, offering fantastic trial opportunities. There's policy support, like the 1,000 Counties project. Extremely strong demand for foreign suppliers. rising healthcare accessibility, and once again, more ample funding. So if you're in medtech, what are the opportunities for you? Home healthcare and wearables, implantable devices, high-end equipment, and diagnostic and monitoring. We like to point out that biosensors, advanced prosthetics, surgical robotics, and portable diagnostics as real standouts with phenomenal potential in the market. Moving on to digital health. China has the world's largest digital health market. A third of global revenue last year came from it, and the market's growing at a whopping 41% per year. The impact of COVID cannot be underestimated. You can see on the right, in just the period of 1 month, Ping An, Good Doctor, and others recorded a 900% increase in new users. In addition, as we came out of COVID-19, the latest data suggests that 94.6% of physicians are now using telemedicine compared to 34.1% prior to COVID. So what's driving this forward? We've already mentioned COVID-19, and there's very large-scale digital health reform. It's largely focused on telemedicine right now, but DTX is in the pipeline. There's the proliferation of InsurTech, a world-class digital infrastructure, and extremely high adoption rates. In fact, the world's largest for both healthcare professionals and patients alike. You can see here that, in fact, 94% of Chinese health professionals use digital health tech or mobile apps. To give you a comparison, the US is just 76%. So what are the key opportunities here? We have specialized telemedicine, digital therapeutics, big data and analytics, and broader digital transformation. I think the ones that really stand out to us are hospital facilitated B2B products, smart compliance solutions off the back of China's new data laws, and disease monitoring solutions that are all especially lucrative and a great time to move within the market. Now, while entering the Chinese market is the most lucrative option for most, not all companies are able to enter the market right now. Many are focused on securing their position in the domestic market. And actually, there are a multitude of ways that even you can leverage the Chinese market to enhance your capabilities and increase competitiveness at home. So establishing a reliable manufacturing base to decrease costs, sourcing the latest innovations, seeking strong financial returns, or hiring best-in-class talent. You can leverage China to work for you if you have the right strategy. This is something that most of the world's leading companies have been doing for many, many years, and there's nothing to stop any of you from replicating them to spur your growth forward. You just need to think about it and develop the right strategy. But translating ambition into success is no easy feat. So before you get to the negotiation table, you're going to have to gather and interpret market intelligence. You're going to have to develop yourself a robust strategy. You're going to have to think about how you're going to protect your IP, how you're going to deal with a complex regulatory environment, and a whole host of other stark challenges that stand in your way to seize the huge opportunities that the Chinese market offers. This summit is really lucky to have a lot of leading experts in all of these different areas that's going to help you guide through it. So please stick around for day 2 and day 3 of this summit. So what advice can I offer to companies of all shapes and sizes? You know, there's no step-by-step approach for China. It doesn't work that way, but there are very clear guiding principles for success that you can use throughout your China journey. So first is, strive for objectivity. I think now, particularly in the last couple of years, China is a highly emotive subject for many. And that's been exacerbated by a lack of quality information and data. And unfortunately, it's led many companies to make decisions on the fly without examining the facts first. Do not fall into this trap. absorb as much market data as you can, speak to as many reputable experts as you can, so you can make a well-informed strategic decision of if and how you go into the Chinese market. Next is assess your China readiness. So you've decided to go, but do you actually have what it takes to be successful here? As you know, it's very challenging. Do you have the capabilities? Do you have the resources, the capital, the time, the energy, the emotions to be here? Should you come here now, or perhaps you should pursue another market first, like the United States, for example? The answers to these questions can really shape your success or indeed failure enormously. So putting in the time to really think objectively and examine that is really important. Once you're in the market, localize your approach. China is a huge and fragmented developing market with very different cultures and values to the West. So localize accordingly. We'd always advise focusing on agility and flexibility internally to allow you to keep pace with the market. I'd also like to point out, particularly for all the Brits here, that there is a degree of risk and uncertainty that goes with it. And those of you that are seeking or perhaps even being promised a risk-free silver bullet for success, you will be disappointed. It does not exist. So you must localize. And lastly, leverage local partnerships. Operating as a lone wolf is a real recipe for disaster, regardless of your size. Instead, seek to align with an ecosystem of supportive, reputable companies that can safely and effectively guide you through the market. You'll hear from many of those in the coming days. So that's it. Thank you very, very much for your time and attention. I could talk about this stuff all day. So, if anyone's interested, feel free to email me or add me on LinkedIn. We'd also like to say we have an amazing healthcare report that will delve into a considerable amount of more detail than I've presented to you today. That's going to be released probably mid to end of April. So follow our official company Serica accounts. And that way you get first access to this comprehensive and free report. So thank you very much again. And Matthew, back to you.
Thank you, Benjamin. Really interesting stuff. Appreciate you sharing with us. I have a couple of questions for you while we still got you here. First one I have is, how can startups or SMEs actually make an impact in the market when there are so many large players?
That's a good question. I think traditionally the model was always built around just simply exporting, but it's very price sensitive. So I think that the best way to succeed is to partner via a joint venture or move through the tech licensing path. A lot of people attempted to do greenfield, establish a woofie in the market, hire a GM, build out a team, establish your own marketing and sales channels. Costs aside, which are considerable. A lot of people think China is cheap. It is not, especially for those kind of specialized staff. You could waste millions with no guarantee of success. So the path of least resistance, find the right players, find the right partners, form a JV, let them worry about the regulations and the business development, and you do what you do best and focus on your solutions. A less ambitious, but still quite swift way of doing that is also tech licensing.
Interesting. We've got time for one more here. Cool. As China pushes for more self-reliance in key tech sectors, how do you think that will affect opportunities for international companies?
Okay. Yeah. So I think again, it's mostly been an export-driven model, particularly from Europe. And as China's trying to increase its own internal capabilities, it's just going to require companies to adapt to a much greater level of localization. So that means registering companies within the market, as I mentioned before, teaming up with the right players, and really localizing everything about your business to the market rather than just simply exporting via distributors. And, you know, you can look and kind of see large examples of this between China and the US. If you look at the President Biden's Inflation Reduction Act, you can see significant manufacturing bases and other heavy localization from Chinese companies across the US, particularly in terms of manufacturing in states like Arizona, Texas, and Nevada. So I think that's a trend that's going to continue globally. And for anyone listening that is reliant on exports via distribution models, I would start to look at alternative methods to stay ahead of the game.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Great stuff. Well, thank you, Benjamin. Really appreciate you sharing. And with that, we'll start to move ahead.
Thank you very much, Matt.
Pleasure.